There are a lot of them, and I created a little slideshow. The state of the bubble. First opinion, Jim Cramer, the GOAT, saying,
okay, so Cramer, if those of you who are older know who Cramer is, I don't know how, I mean, he was always kind of a meme. I always liked what Cramer said about there's a boom market everywhere, no matter the time. So like you think about the 1930s United States, we're in the middle of the Great Depression, and we still have, you know, the best movies coming out of there was a boom in Hollywood in the 30s. There's always a boom. So I do like Cramer as much of a kind of a meme he is. And, you know, he's had some good takes sometimes.
Skeptics keep an open AI mind, and he's a believer.
Even though there are countless AI skeptics, the market clearly believes that OpenAI can afford to spend tens of billions of dollars on AMD's highest-end chips in addition to NVIDIA's chips. I know that I am a believer.
Now, on the other hand, you have people questioning all the amount of investment in these AI companies. Someone actually asked Mark Zuckerberg, you know, all this money you're investing, is it worth it? Mark says, you know, maybe we're going to misspend, but it's worth the risk.
It's a lot of money.
It is. And if we end up misspending a couple of $100 billion, I think that is going to be very unfortunate, obviously. But what I'd say is I actually think the risk is higher on the other side. If you
okay, that is a total fact. That is a total fact. Like full stop. Like, okay, listen. Here's the deal. If you guys don't know, I did a video on this not too long ago. Actually, the last video I did. Look, they've been hiring up talent since August. They gave Andrew Tulum $1.2 billion, right? Just recently, last Saturday, Wall Street Journal reported, a co-founder of Thinking Machines. The reason why they did that, is because they don't want to be, like, they create software, right? And if you see the software coming out of Anthropic, coming out of Carthopy and OpenAI, if you see that software, it's a total threat. Like, take Sora, right? OpenAI launches Sora, right? Which is, it had 1 million downloads in the first few days. That's like, any attention spent on Sora is attention not on WhatsApp, not on Facebook, not on Instagram. You know what I'm saying? So, of course, it makes perfect sense. Like, from their perspective, you have to. And I always kind of thought that about them. Oh, good point. Good catch. Yeah, for him, he's right. Like, obviously, they have to spend the money.
Build too slowly, and then super intelligence is possible in 3 years, but you built it out assuming it would be there in 5 years, then you're just out of position on what I think is going to be the most important technology that enables the most new products and innovation and value creation in history.
Obviously, it's from a CEO's perspective in big tech. You have to get on board the ship just in case it takes off and becomes the biggest product ever. But then you also have people, outsiders maybe, like Hank Green, who are looking at...
Yeah. So, I mean, he doesn't touch on that, but yes, of course, as a tech company, you have to be close to it. Keep in mind, Meta's very, very close to it. They've spent, like I said, last week, they spent $1.2 billion just to get Andrew Tulum. So they're really close to it. They're keeping an eye on it. I never understood, and I made a point of this in the video, I never understood why they weren't able to develop this talent internally. I really, for the life of me, I'll never understand that. How it took, like a third of AI researchers in 2015, right, at OpenAI to completely change the space. I guess in some ways it kind of makes sense. But like, they had so much talent, like presumably they were hiring the best and brightest the past 15, 20 years. The fact that they were never able to convert that, like, always kind of blew my mind. So I think that, like, yeah, Meta had to do it. I think maybe a little bit different than the reason Zilla said. I mean, it's a complete threat. It's a complete threat to Meta. Any attention you spend on Sora, any attention you spend, on these other platforms is less attention on theirs.
A series.
And remember, Meta's in the business of selling ads.
The bubbles and saying maybe this is a bubble.
It took a little bit of time for me to parse. And once I did, it kind of terrified me. I'm going to show it to you as well. What a good little visualization we have on our hands here.
Okay, CoreWeave is worth billions of dollars. I actually haven't known about them for very long. The reason they came on my radar is, you guys remember OpenPipe? Product sold to one of the weaves. And while I was looking for them, I ran into it. So it was kind of one of those things where, they're a huge company. Huge company. The money going into OpenAI, the money going into Anthropic is bonkers. I know you guys have all seen it, but it is crazy. Like, okay, this is from early September. Anthropic did a $13 billion round, put their valuation at $183 billion. The money going into XAI is remarkably similarly large. They did a $10 billion round in July 1st, and another $5 billion Oh, okay, this is the earlier one that came later. Okay, so yeah, like they've done an enormous amount of funding, 17 billion. So we're talking about XAI, we're talking about OpenAI and Anthropic, the amount of money, let's say from venture firm, there's a huge exposure there. But a lot of the other companies, and we'll talk about this at the end, and I mentioned this also in a video. I mean, this is very reflective of 2015, 2016, right? Where, ventures are trying to fund, decent ideas building off the technology. And then, yeah, I haven't really spoke to you. I mean, I'm sure you guys have seen it. OpenAI has been all over. I don't know exactly how to make sense of all the chip stuff. You guys have seen all this chip stuff, right? I don't know. I'm so far, like in my career, away from hardware. But yeah, there's obviously a lot of movement there. And, I can't quite parse it all out.
How NVIDIA and OpenAI fuel the AI money machine. It just seems messy. It seems like bubble mechanics to me, you guys.
So yeah, Hank Green says, maybe looks like bubble mechanics. I'm going to remind you guys that we're doing short clips here, so I'll leave the links to the full things below if you want to watch the full videos, get their whole perspective on the thing. This is obviously a very truncated version of that. I'm just trying to give you a sense of the wide variety of takes on this whole thing. We have Paul Tudor Jones saying that if there's a bubble, it's a very small bubble.
54% of fund managers think that we're in an AI bubble. If it's a bubble, it's a small one. If you think about the bubbles of the past 3 or 4
Wow, so far it sounds like he's pretty optimistic on. This is not by the way the default talk. If you talk to, and of course my video was called AI is not a bubble, think harder, and I was coming at it from a really different perspective. But actually, like so far it seems like he's not that sold on it. By the way, I really like that he got these business people in, because when I was thinking about it, when I was writing my video and I was putting up like conversation points for today, what kept going through my mind was I don't know their exposure. Like, yeah, it's open. There's billions of dollars. Thinking machines. He better mention thinking machines. They've got billions of dollars, set aside. But who's exposed, right? Like if Kleiner Perkins goes under, that just means, like, I guess venture funding wouldn't be as great, though. You know what I mean? Like, okay, when AIG goes down, like in the mortgage bubble, let's say, when Bear Stearns goes down, when the whole banking system is at risk, you know what I mean? Like, the banks had huge exposure to everything that when it comes to something like this, like, say Kleiner Perkins goes down, like, what are the dominoes that fall?
3 or 4 decades. The Nikkei in 89, NASDAQ in 99, biotech 2000, just after 2011, 12, China 2007. All those were 400% to 600% gains. The NASDAQ's up 200% off the bottom. So I don't know whether we're going to blow off like we did in 1999. Is it possible? Are all the ingredients in place? I think clearly they are. For me, the one thing that you can never, ever forget is that a year from today, assuming that the president gets his wishes, that the Fed funds rate's going to probably be 2.5% overnight rates or 2.75.
Like, see that stuff, which I think are the markers of a bubble that I have almost no opinion or knowledge on, right? Are important. Like, if you're going to say that AI is a bubble, like, I think that's the kind of argument you have to make, right?
That's a really compelling story for higher equity prices.
So there you go. All the ingredients might be in place, but it could go higher from here, is Paul's point, because of some macroeconomics. Then you also have the perspective that actually it's a huge bubble, not a small one. According to one analyst, the AI bubble is 17 times.
Well, that's kind of fucked up. Two completely different points. Actually, I was like, when he was showing that dude on CNBC, show the let's say the down point, let's say the minimum. It's like a complete
the size of the dot-com frenzy, and 4 times the subprime. And then you even have takes that, like, yes, it's a bubble, but it's not going to pop yet. I've seen that a lot.
Are we in an AI bubble? Of course, right? We were into that bubble. Of course we are. I mean, we're hyped, we're accelerating, we're putting enormous leverage into the system. That said, I don't see it ending for several years.
On top of that, of course, we have the opinion, I didn't represent it too much here, but that it's a bubble and that it's bad. This is probably most spearheaded by Ed Zitron.
The big question is whether or not all of this AI spending is a bubble.
Yes, you have committed to failure. There is no doing this. If they gave every dollar just to Sam Altman, the guy who can't even tell you why you're giving the money to him. No one else has a big business doing this, even Claude Code with Anthropic, which is theoretically meant to be super popular, $33 million a month. That's less than the Cincinnati Reds make.
Ed's argument basically boils down to they're spending way
32 million a month. I don't think. Hold on.
That's less than the Cincinnati Reds make.
Ed's argument basically boils down to they're spending way too much.
Oh, he was talking about the revenue. He was talking about the revenue for. That's not a very super convincing argument. For a lot of different reasons, but I mean the most basic one is Snapchat in 2015 did $100 million in total revenue. It was worth $3 billion. People cried bubble at that point in time, and I do have a video on that in a second. But the fact that they were capturing people's attention was the main metric. For Claude Code, the install base is huge. This is kind of like when I think about AI not being a bubble, I always come back to the fact that Cursor must have, I don't know what the numbers are. I guess he said, you can extrapolate Claude Codes from the $33 million of revenue. But I also saw that 48% of senior devs are using Claude Code, right? Hacker News did a report just a few weeks ago that was saying the install base for Cursor and Claude Code are substantial, right? Like, I mean, is anybody doubting that? Does anybody think that once you use Claude Code, you're going to go back? In other words, they're getting people's attention now, and then we'll see what happens later.
Too much money on AI. It doesn't justify itself in revenues. And perhaps the industry is just a much smaller industry than people are betting on. It's not going to be some $1 trillion industry. And then finally, you have of course, the perspective that yes, it's a bubble, but it's.
That's crazy. They're going to get Bezos' opinion. Bezos has been completely removed from everything that's happened, right? Amazon has, there's been a lot written. Of course, I covered it in my last video. Like, they've been pretty much removed from any, let's say, AI intervention. They've been completely, and it is a little bit shocking because, they power the internet, so you think they'd want to be there, and in some ways they are with SageMaker and so forth, but they haven't exactly been a mover and a shaker.
But it's good. It's a good thing that.
I mean, Amazon's core business is so bizarre because, I saw somebody in LA, a friend of mine, talk about how she just orders from Amazon Grocer now. You know what I mean? Like, Amazon has their claws in so many different areas that. It's kind of hard to imagine
bubble,
them.
Actually. If you go back, the 90s had a biotech bubble. And there were a bunch of pharma startup companies that were designing drugs.
And by the way, is anybody concerned about the 90s biotech bubble? You know what I mean? It might, when they say bubble, I always think they're talking about the bubbles that, kind of have been impactful. If you're just trying to say that it's overinflated a little bit, does anybody care that much?
And using new techniques, and the world got very excited. The investment world got very excited. As a group, they all lost money, but we did get a couple of life-saving drugs. A bubble like
That's the other thing. There's going to be winners, and Claude Code was already mentioned. Cursor was mentioned. There's going to be some. There's no doubt in my mind that that the install base for Cursor, the install base for Claude Code is going to keep growing, right? And there might be competitors and so forth, but that seems like the way.
A banking bubble, the crisis in the banking system, that's just bad. That's like 2008. And so those bubbles society wants to avoid. The ones that are industrial are not nearly as bad. They could even be good, because when the dust settles and you see who are the winners, society benefits from those inventions. They still get those life-saving.
Now, look, this is okay. I think there'll be some major innovations. I've talked about Tahoe Therapeutics, before. If you guys don't know what Tahoe Therapeutics is, I don't know that much either because they won't return my calls. But they're using artificial intelligence to speed up medical research. I think that's a great use case, right? Digesting all the medical literature. I also think, iBot's another good example here. iBot's actually their hardware, right? But using actually their own models to, improve vision tests. Now, I have no idea. I've never used iBot's product. I have no but I'm just saying, you could see, and I always think about this. There's some pretty good use cases, right? There's a pretty good use case that come, and I think and this has kind of been my opinion since day one, and I'll wrap up after this video with this opinion, is that as a dev, you're going to benefit financially, right? If you're familiar with how to do workflows, if you're familiar with how to write prompts, it got me a job, right, this past summer, and also the opportunity to do a bunch of different, types of roles. So, You know what I mean? Like that's where the money is. So if you're looking to get a paycheck, it's pretty, there's definitely some opportunity there.
Saving drugs. And that's what's going to happen here too. This is real. The benefits to society from AI are going to be gigantic.
Well, there it is. There's all the possible perspectives I could find on
Good job, dude. Zilla did a great job with that, dude. What do you guys think? That was good. I was kind of, when he was going to cover it, I was curious how he was going to do it because he's very precise. And, having spent time creating a video myself on the bubble, spending time in the space, I was trying to think like, this is a hard question to answer. I think that the real answer has to do with the business folks. Like for a type of bubble that affects, let's say, the culture at large, I think that's like really the ones that make people nervous. At least it makes me nervous. Are people going to be exposed? That is companies. And as a consequence, is a lot of money going to be lost? You know what I mean? Those are the type. But if it's just like a biotech bubble where, some Kleiner Perkins is going to lose a bunch of money, like who really care? You know what I mean? Like, or Kleiner Perkins, like, or maybe there's an argument that we should care. Amplify partners. By the way, Databricks has done the largest amount of funding in the history of the world. I think they've done their last round they called it Series J, and it was like $15 billion. All right, let's see how I close it up, dude. Good job, man. I'm like very happy that
on AI, it's not a bubble. It is a bubble. It's a small bubble. It's a big bubble. It's a bad bubble. It's a good bubble. And I just want to remind you that nobody really knows what the future holds. Lest you want to go ahead and short the market, just know that timing the market is never really that easy and usually fails.
So you guys know what he means when he says short the market? You can take two positions when making if you want to participate in the stock market, you can bet the market will go up or bet a stock price will go up. That's what we all know. The other position you could take is called a short. Most trading applications that you'll use will have a little bit more hurdles to do a short. You have to, like, for example, if you were just to use Cash App's buy feature, you could buy a bunch of stocks. You won't out of the gate be able to short stuff. I, for example, shorted Tesla about 5 years ago. That was one of my, let's say, trading successes. But it's a lot more fun, especially if you're a cynical person. The idea with a short is you borrow a stock, you sell it, and then you have to pay back the stock at the price it's selling today. So if the stock price goes down, you make the difference. Stock price goes up, of course, you have to pay. You also have to cover. If you have a short position and the stock price goes up, you actually have to pay out of pocket to cover it. So let's say like the mechanics of making a short are a little bit different and oftentimes more involved, but it is fun, right? Like to sit there and say, I'm going to short this market. All right, we're going to watch the rest of this. Then we got to take a minute.
So I'm certainly not advocating anyone run out and change their financial position. I just wanted to summarize what has been confusing me lately, which is that I've been looking at this industry wondering, is it a bubble? And if so, how big? And when is it going to pop, if ever? And so far, I've heard from a lot of people, some smart, some not, and almost no one agrees. Well, at least on the specifics. I should say, as I was reviewing this, I was like, well, actually, most people think it is a bubble of some kind. It's just like, is it a good bubble, bad? Like, what type is it? That's where everyone disagrees. I will say it was hard to find people who said there's no overspending going on. I think I even found a Sam Altman quote saying that, in a private dinner, he acknowledged.
Yeah, he did. He also did it publicly. Here, I got to run an ad.
Most people who are paying attention, I guess I should say, will admit it's frothy, but exactly how bad things are, how unsustainable things are, is where everyone just kind of wildly disagrees. And yeah, that's the state of the bubble.
So when I think of bubble, like I was thinking kind of like in the most negative terms. In my video, I was comparing it to the NFT bubble and the mortgage bubble. And I think it's pretty much clear that nobody has a strong opinion in that direction. If you're talking about is there too much money, and I mentioned that in my video, like, yeah, if you look at things like thinking machines, that's pretty shocking that they received $2 billion without a product. Meta's at risk for this. The last thing I want to show is like, okay, from our perspective, right? Let's say AI engineers, software engineers, this is kind of, I think, a really good point. This is a lecture that Thiel gave in, on his book, 0 to 1, actually in a class, at a Stanford class. Take a look at this and tell me what you guys think.
And so you always have this question about, does the intersection, is it real? Does it make sense? Does it have value that one should ask? And of course, there are startup versions of this where the sort of the really bad versions, you just take a whole series of buzzwords, sharing mobile, social apps, you combine them, and you have some kind of narrative. And whether or not that's a real business or not it's generally a bad sign. So it's almost this pattern recognition when you have this rhetoric of the sort of intersections, it generally does not work. The something of somewhere is really mostly just the nothing of nowhere. And it's like the Stanford of North Dakota.
Yeah. So my approach when I was doing my video was looking at in terms of that. And when you look at the companies that have been funded, I mean, you can pick any one of a number of them on here. General Tuition kind of stands out. With Fleetworks is a perfect example. Fleetworks is very similar to a company I work for called Cargamatic, except they've added, let's say, LLMs or agents to their marketplace for shipping. But there's a billion. Node, same thing. They added, so what he was saying, Thiel did in 2014, he was describing the state of entrepreneurship in 2014. And he was saying there were so many companies that at their core were just throwing around a lot of buzzwords. So when I was looking at, in my video specifically, when I was looking at like, well, what's the absolute state of work, of innovation, of entrepreneurship, I mostly saw the same thing as what he saw in 2014, which is you have a company like Fleetworks. They're not doing anything new. They've just added AI to an existing process. So that was kind of like my approach. I think talking about a bubble as like in the ways kind of I outlined as this very severe like let's say moment in time where you need to like be aware of some of the potential for exposure. I think he did a good job capturing some of the business, and it didn't seem like they were overwhelmed. They didn't seem like too overwhelmed with exposure. All right, cool, homies. So look out for my video. I'm going to probably clip some of this.